today. James or Dawn and Victoria James and Gary Sergenko. And I believe, Victoria, you are going to lead in this message today. So bless you as you come.
Thank you. What a privilege to be here today. And I know Dawn's name is in the program, so I hope you don't say we picked the short straw with her today. But I have to start by saying how honored I am to be here and finally meet Mervyn Marla Watson. When Pastor Murray said we have to dance, that is my background, actually. I actually started a school of dance and fine arts in Winnipeg, and Dawn and I have a classical music background. So back in the 80s, somebody introduced us to some Israeli-style praise music, and we sort of found out, gee, I think we have kind of a knack for this. Sounds like a storm going on outside. Okay. I'll just sort of, I'll show you my moves. Anyway, of course it was Mervyn Marla's music that so inspired us, but we didn't know anything about Israel at the time. We just thought, oh, this is really, we kind of like this. And then years later, actually, Mervyn Marla came to Winnipeg, and we went to one of their meetings, still didn't really understand, and there's a whole story which I won't share today about how God has brought us into it, but and to this day, we sing much of your music, and I just want to thank you for giving of yourself in this way, because it's meant so much. And when I came in this morning and heard Marla playing, and I'm sorry I don't know your name together, but I thought that's a sermon in itself. We don't need words because we can hear the heart of God coming out of you. So I just want to honor you and thank you. I'm so glad that Elena is working on a documentary about this movement, and it's so important that we don't lose this beginning in this chapter in your incredible ministry. So I was very encouraged weeks ago when we realized we were coming to Abbotsford that the Torah portion today, and I don't know how much you were on the Torah portion, but it's lecha, right? Basically get up off of that thing. So just to reiterate, I'm sure you're very familiar with the story. In Genesis 15, starting at verse 7, God says, I am Adonai who brought you out of the Ur of the Chaldeans in order to give you a land to inherit it. And Abraham at the time says, well, how am I going to know that you're going to do this? And they do the covenant of the pieces. God asks them to bring him a young cow, a 3-year-old she-goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young bird. And they cut them in half, etc. And then there's another portion, and we'll get to that in a minute, but then there's another portion when Abraham says, I'm not seeing this descendant thing happening the way he says it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to take this matter into my own hands. And God says, yes, you are about to bear a son, and you shall name him Ishmael, for Adonai has heard your affliction. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And away from all his brothers he will dwell. And then, lastly, this is a portion we'll just touch on, and mostly concentrating on the covenant of the pieces today. God just reminds Abraham, yes, I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you throughout their generations, and for an everlasting covenant in order to be your God and your seed's God after you. I will give to you and your seed after you the land where you are an outsider, the whole land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. So, by the way, we are going across Canada. We got the Lech Lecha from Winnipeg. Gary heard it to go to BC, and we're going to a strange land where there are these outcroppings of things that come out of the ground, and we don't know what they are. It's very strange to us from Winnipeg. What are these giant round things and pointy things, but we are sharing the story about Canada's connection to the rebirth of Israel. And by the way, it's specifically Winnipeg's connection, but since we're in BC, we have to kind of, broaden it to Canada. And we're very proud of this role of Canada in this incredible prophetic event. But I don't have to tell you how many churches, how many Christians do not see modern Israel as anything remarkable. In fact, Israel seems to be causing trouble again. And I recall one pastor's wife saying, there's nothing special about Israel. They can get to the back of the bus with the rest of them. And comments like, all the promises and covenants were fulfilled in Jesus, makes it possible for Christians to blame the Jewish people for having a sovereign nation in their ancestral God-given land. And we are seeing just unfathomable, after the events 3 weeks ago, accusations against Israel. And at the very least, for people who do not understand the history of the land and all that's going on, a lack of empathy for this heinous crimes that were committed and for their suffering now, and even encouraging people to say, get out of the land. But today I want to explore why God felt it was so important to give Abraham and his seed a land. So important that he needed to cut a covenant about it. This was the thing that God said, I'm giving the land and a people. And as we all know, in this congregation, they can't be separated. They're joined, this promise, this eternal promise. So they needed to cut a covenant. And as a new Christian, I became a Christian as an adult. I mean, this is one bizarre story. Like if you're reading along going, what? So, it was an ancient custom of the time. Animals that were permitted for sacrifice were selected, they are killed, their carcasses divided, and the divided portions are placed in 2 rows over against each other, and the contracting parties go between the rows, invoking, basically saying, you see that animal? That will be you if you break this covenant. That was the way it worked. And the God of the universe, the one who is and is to come, used that very human, it had to do with sacrifices too, but he said, okay, this is what we're doing, this is the custom. But what did he do that was different? He put Abram to sleep, and he said, I alone, and it talks about God in the form of a blazing torch and an oven, himself only walking between the two rows. And he said, Abraham, it's not even up to you to keep your portion. I alone am responsible for this covenant. I will not break this covenant. It's never going to be broken. And God also then promises Abraham at the same time that his land and descendants will take 400 years before it comes to fruition, because in Genesis it says, the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Or in another translation it says, the sins of the Amorites have not yet reached their full measure. So whatever full measure means to God, we don't know. But he's just, he doesn't just say, all right, move on out. He kind of knows that they're going to reach their measure in 400 years, but he's still giving them a chance somehow. It's a real mystery, but it's a just part of God's character, isn't it? He's just. And so he also says, not only is it going to take 400 years, but you're going to be sojourners in the land, and you're going to be slaves. And, you would think that Abraham might say, I'm not that excited about this land, this whole promise you're giving me. You're telling me I'm not going to see it. We're not going to possess the land. We'll live in there and his descendants, but as sojourners. And by the way, the people, his descendants, are going to be slaves. This isn't so good. So what would compel Abraham to keep following God? Why would he go back to the idols of Ur? When I was a child, there was a television show which I would now never let my children or grandchildren watch it. And it was about a family of witches. And they would get themselves into a situation and, get themselves into a heap of trouble. And all of a sudden, with a little twitch of the nose, boom, everything was just bang, right? Perfect. And that's all it took. And sometimes don't we wonder, why doesn't the all-powerful one just make everything right in an instant? Isn't he a perfectionist? Doesn't he want everything just get it right, come on, stop doing this and I can fix this. But he doesn't want to fix this. He wants our relationship. I've heard it said that the way you spell love is T-I-M-E. And we all know stories, and maybe ourselves, of wealthy parents or very busy parents who just, not because they mean to, but because they're just caught up in things and they don't give that time to their children. They give them gifts, they do their best, but what's missing is that time. And it often leaves a wound. And many of us have experienced that ourselves and probably been that way somewhat to our own children. Inevitably children would rather spend time being heard, being known, and know their parents. And God created humankind to have a relationship with them. He's love, right? God is love. And he needs people to love, because love isn't love till you give it away. And so it's about a relationship. Malcolm Hedding, the former director of ICEJ, will often ask people, what do you think is the most important covenant? And God made other covenants to Noah, like, I'm not going to destroy the world in a flood, and to Abraham, to Moses, with David, and the new covenant in Yeshua's blood. And many Christians will say, oh, the new covenant's the best one, the important one. But he says, actually, no. It's the Abrahamic covenant, the one we're talking about here today. Because God wanted Abraham and his descendants to walk and talk with God and model what it meant for him to be their God. And he, of course, brought down Torah, and he brought his ways in writing to Moses. And thereby, he would show everybody, this people that he chose, who he is. This is his character. And by the way, that has changed the world in so many ways we just take for granted. It was life-changing. It was absolutely paradigm-changing for the world to have rules that were fair and took into account the poor and weren't just get and for yourself, But anyway, he says, Malcolm Hedding says, that the Abrahamic covenant is the most important one, but we need the new covenant in Yeshua's blood in order to fully walk it out and be able to do the covenant with Abraham in the fullest way. Adam in the garden walked and talked with God in the cool of the evening, and there was that fall, and now we struggle with that, but we have received the promise of the new hearts of flesh that were promised so often in the Hebrew Scriptures. And on Abraham's part, knowing the King of the universe was so life-changing and rich, he said, I'm going to follow you no matter what, even though it was challenging and strange. And, he might have had moments of doubt, but nothing could compare to what it was to know this God, what it felt like to talk to him, what his presence felt like. That was all and all. And he's like, okay, whatever you say, I trust you. And this is good. You are good. I know that there's nothing else that would satisfy. And this is really clearly demonstrated when God asked him to sacrifice his only son. Boy, that was the test of all tests. And how many of us say to ourselves, what would I have said? Would I have that kind of absolute assurance that I knew I could trust God with this? But that's whatever it was, and we know it too as people who have come to know the Father through Yeshua, that just even those little moments, because I came to know the Lord in my early 20s, as I said, And I was searching for God and all kinds of New Age things. And I had a dramatic encounter in my bedroom with the living God. And I felt the liquid love of God just wash over me, wave after wave after wave. And I was so new, I'd never heard of the charismatic whatever. I just didn't know anything. Anybody who had ever had this experience or that it was possible, but I felt his love wash me, wash me. And many of us have wounds in our childhood and, you know, maybe feeling not loved, not seen, not heard. And it was just, I knew that I was loved. And then, after a while, don't ask me how, I just know Father, Son, and Holy Spirit were in the bedroom, and they were imparting things to me, and we were laughing, and Don was sound asleep. That's okay, because it was my church to have this experience. But all I know is I woke up the next morning, and I saw, like, oh, there's a lamp, you know, there's a table, like, what is that? And I said to myself, man, it's like I've been born again. And then I realized, that's what they're talking about, born again. Born again is a real thing. It's not the concept of just, you're born again. You know, it's like, no, I'm really a new creation. And, but being a Christian has not been the easy road. And, you know, we're warned, right? It's not like, oh, well, good things happen now and no bad things. But nevertheless, I can never escape that. I can never go, oh, it's not worth it. That little taste, and little taste sense, but just that sense of God's love and his presence is like, no, I'll do anything. At least I may balk, but I know you're good. I know you're what I'm searching for, and I know you are truth. And years later, I had another supernatural experience which brought Israel into focus and deep, deep, deep into my heart. And I won't tell you that story. It's another supernatural story. But he absolutely broke my heart for his chosen people, even as it breaks for him. And if I thought I was unpopular or misunderstood before, I discovered a whole new level of being an outcast in the world and the church. Boy, was I naive. I had no idea. And every now and then I think of God as a used car salesman. It's like, you know, I did not know that this was going to follow. But anyway, and you know, sometimes, I'm confessing this today, I honestly, sometimes with the angst and the struggle and the misunderstanding of people thinking you lost your mind, I often wish, I admire families when I see there's no godly kind of principles, like they can just have fun. They're just enjoying each other and there's nothing to kind of, a little bit of a hurdle over, you know. And I know that sounds terrible, but man, it's less complicated and carefree, it seems, right? That's the illusion. And there is eternity, so there's that. But you know, there's no judgment and, you know, all these things. And it's definitely working in an Israel ministry is complicated and sometimes eliminated, and not with our initiative, relationships with other Christians. But this burden for the Jewish people has reached a screeching crescendo. It was already bad, but after the events on October 7th and seeing how quickly the world has, and much of the church, sadly, has turned against the Jews. So many days I just want to take off this cloak of Israel and run away from it. Like, just go. I want to just go on a holiday. I just want to forget about it. I just want to stop having this pain, this burden, this feeling of frustration that I feel. Like, why don't you see? Do you not have empathy? But I can't, and neither can you. He loved us, he's touched us, and we are ruined. And it's still worth it all. This relationship, it has taken time. Having this relationship does not also mean we hear or respond perfectly either. Hence the Ishmael situation with Abraham. Now, Don and I are just in the process of wondering, walking through a situation we believe was an Ishmael in our life. Has anybody else had that experience where you sort of take matters into your own hands and not wait for the Lord to make it absolutely clear what you should do? But it's okay. I mean, there's consequences and you feel pain, right? It's not nothing. But God is not looking for perfection in us. He is not looking for us to get everything right. He is looking for people who will learn from making these mistakes. And then we also learn how to discern what is his voice and what is our own thoughts or the voice of the enemy. God blessed Ishmael and his descendants, right? He made a good thing for Ishmael. It hasn't been easy either. And he did not disqualify Abraham because of this error of judgment. And Abraham still was promised the land and the people. And God, who knows our weakness, is committed to leading us to our destiny, even if it takes some circuitous routes. God's covenant with Abraham forever changes the equilibrium of the inhabitants of the world, right? Whether or not there is intellectual assent or awareness, there is a spiritual awareness that God, the true God, is inherently connected with the land of Israel and the Jewish people. And I find it fascinating that the only land whose borders were given by God very distinctly is the only land, only nation for 75 years whose legitimacy continues to be questioned by the world. It's illogical, it's irrational, and so much hatred is directed at this tiny sliver of land and its inhabitants, as well as those whose ancestors once did live there. And we are seeing in living color the depth of latent anti-Semitism that never really died after the Holocaust. And much of that was at the hands of our church fathers and Christians when we became arrogant, as Paul told us not to do. But the conflict, as we all know here, is not even about them, it's about Jerusalem, the place where God declares his presence will dwell forever, and specifically the Temple Mount. The battle for who is God is being fueled by Satan, and he is throwing gasoline on it right now. As he can see, his doom is drawing near, and he wants to bring as many people with him as he can. But I want to return to the theme of relationship, just in closing. This is the hallmark of the kingdom. We cannot be Christians behind a screen, in our desk, not having to relate to each other. And by the way, relationship means potential for trouble. And it means courage. How many of you have been married for a while? It means courage, and it means things, it could cause, things could go in your life that you're like, well, if I was by myself, they wouldn't have to want me to do this, and that kind of thing. But it is the kingdom. That's why marriage is a sacrament. Bridges for Peace was raised up over 50 years ago when a Canadian pastor and scholar, Dr. G. Douglas Young, established a seminary in Israel, believing that every pastor should study for a period of time in the land of the Bible. And living in Israel, Dr. Young discovered that the people there are suffering a corporate PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, for millennia of being persecuted. And so for the many Christians that say, oh, they're just secular and they don't care about God, we need to understand that, and I'm sure you do, that they are suffering this corporate stress. And they were driven out of every land they had ever migrated to, killed, persecuted, and all of this culminating in the Holocaust. And sadly, Dr. Young became more aware that Christians were much at the hands of this. And he observed the fledgling Jewish state. He was in there in the early 60s. And they were struggling to embrace and support new immigrants that were finally allowed to come to the one Jewish state that they could come and be Jewish and not be tossed around. And, being a Jew was safe. Now, that's a weird word for a tiny nation where all your neighbors want to kill you and state it regularly, but nevertheless, in their hearts, they were safe. It's their land. And he saw that the struggle was that the budget required so much in defense, right, for the neighborhood. And he wondered how he and other Christians could come alongside and offer some support. And it was then that what was to become Bridges for Peace began with our food projects. And Dr. Young was there during the 6-Day War offering the seminary station wagon as an ambulance. By the way, Merv was just telling us stories. He knew Dr. Young, so you can ask him some more things, just how much of an influence he and his wife, Snooki, were by their understanding and kind hearts. And people used to criticize him and say, well, you're giving them food and you're not telling them about Jesus. And he wrestled with this one night. He wrestled and wrestled and wrestled. He was up all night saying, God, am I doing something wrong? And God said very clearly to him, you feed them, I'll save them. Okay. Anyway, he was eventually awarded the Yahir Yerushalayim, Righteous of Jerusalem, which is an incredibly great honor for a Gentile, especially in Jerusalem. But our work in Bridges for Peace is building bridges through relationships. We don't just drop buckets of money and say, go do whatever it is you want to do and what you need. It has taken, as you know, many Jews a long, long time to trust Christians. And we are committed to being in the communities of Israel, meeting the recipients of our assistance, working with local agencies to support those in need, as well as building strong relationships with many in the Knesset and other leaders in Israel. Our volunteers, we have about 60 from around the world, have remained in Israel. They've heard, Lach Lecha, go, get up and go. I'm taking you to Israel, just as that gentleman shared. I'm going. And they've remained throughout war, delivering food and needed packages during bombs flying and wearing hazmat suits during COVID. No one is forced to say, but the relationship with God and the delight that comes when following Him, even when there's danger, compels them. You know, Ruth told Naomi, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and often it ends there, but it follows up by saying, and where you die, I will die. And that's our volunteers. In Canada and other nations, we've also established deep and solid relationships with the Jewish community, and Gary may tell you a little bit more about that. During this crisis, it's meant so much to them in particular, but standing with them during these times of crisis is of immeasurable value. We have seen many of our Jewish, you could call them secular friends, start to turn their hearts back towards the God of Israel through hearing even us using their scriptures. Sometimes we feel like our role is to remind them who they are or whose they are. Circling back to the Covenant of the Pieces, I'm going to end with this. Bridges for Peace has a 2-week course called the Institute of Israel Studies. And we have people from the Knesset, we have journalists, we have rabbis, sofars, scribes, and a whole variety of speakers. And one morning we heard a rabbi from Jerusalem talk about the Covenant of Pieces in Genesis. He was describing the symbolic meaning behind the choice of the young cow, the she-goat, the ram, the turtle dove, and young bird. And sadly, I do not remember what nations they represented. Some nations, maybe you know. There was something symbolic about the choice of these animals. What we do know is that the turtle dove always represents Israel. It's this very sweet, small, not very strong, but anyway, the turtle dove is Israel. And this rabbi said, you know, sages have never figured out what the last bird is, and he called it a white dove. He said, we've never figured out, who is this white dove and what is it doing there? And he's looking at the group, and he says, I know now. God just downloaded it to me. It's you. It's Christians. You're the white dove. So, we hear this in the morning, and I was asked to lead a cohort of the group on a prayer walk in the ramparts. And if you've been to the old city, it's a lovely place, and you walk along the wall, and then you end up facing the Mount of Olives. And we were at our last prayer stop, and I had asked somebody to pray. And we were closing our eyes, and I bowed my head, and the Lord said to me, look up. And as I was looking up, a bird grazed my hair. And I looked up, and it was a turtle dove. And it was then a white dove followed it. But then the white dove started doing this circle, and the turtle dove followed it. The white dove went over here. The turtle dove followed it. The white dove went up and swooped. The turtle dove followed it. And what was, from hearing that rabbi say, it's you, the white dove, we were absolutely stricken by the beautiful dance of these two birds with the white dove leading the turtle dove. And it wasn't an end game, like we gotta get over there. It was in itself, intrinsically, a beautiful piece, a beautiful dance. And if I could read a birdie head, I would say I think they really enjoyed it. But it was unmistakable. And I think that is our role. I've heard it said, a Christian will ask their pastor, what does this passage of scripture mean? And they'll talk, blah, 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 for days, and they'll yak about it. But a Jew will ask their rabbi, how do you do this scripture? And that's Hebraic thought versus Greek thought, right there in a nutshell. We hope we've got the Hebraic thinking. I believe we do. In fact, I know we do at Bridges for Peace. It's relationship building, building these bridges from this horrible, ugly chasm created muchly by Christians of anti-Semitism and arrogance. And it's building relationships. And we are dancing. It's the process. It's not the end game. It's the process of these relationships and our hearts being joined together and our hearts all learning from each other and being able to say, even in some way that I thanked Mervyn Merlin this morning, thank you for preserving the Bible. Thank you for, in spite of your, failures, and they're well recorded in Scripture, you maintained, you stayed, and we are the recipients. We owe you such a great deal to learn from them. Time, T-I-M-E, spells love. And we are doing Isaiah 40, comfort my people, as well as Isaiah 49:22. When God says, I will lift up my hand to the nations, raise my banner to the peoples. Do you see me? You're to bring my sons in their arms, and your daughters will be carried on their shoulders, bringing them back to the land God promised Abraham and his descendants 4,000 years ago, forever. So thank you for all you do to stand shoulder to shoulder. And in Hebrew, it's actually one shoulder. It's one shoulder. With the land and people of Israel, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with you to make the name of Adonai famous in all the earth. And we do it in the power in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus, Messiah, the Christ, the lover of our souls and our soon and coming King.
Amen.
And I'm going to introduce Gary Sergienko, our new national director, to you, and he'll share a little bit more about Bridges for Peace.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you for allowing us to be here today with you. And just a couple of words to those who haven't heard about Bridges for Peace yet. So we are, actually I wanted to quote, I really enjoyed your worship time, and thank you so much, and beautiful words. So, through times of joy and mirth, through times of grief and strife, we pledge our unity, our love will show. I think that's what Bridges for Peace is about, and we are trying to reach churches and Christians here in Canada and to point out Israel to them, that they would care for Israel, that they would care for the Jewish people, that they would pray for Israel, and they would support Israel in any way they can. They would build relationships with the Jewish people in Canada and in Israel. And we are an international Christian organization. We have our offices in 9 countries with our headquarters in Jerusalem. And so I think it's a beautiful picture that we come, if you could click it to the next slide, please. We come in Israel as Christians from around the world. Christians from Japan, Christians from South Africa, Christians from New Zealand, Christians from Canada. And we try to come alongside the Jewish people and help in any way we can. And a big project for us is Aliyah, helping Jewish people come to Israel. And over the years, we've helped over 100,000 Jewish people come to Israel. I'm sorry, if you could leave the previous slide for now. Thank you. When they come to Israel, a lot of them need time to learn the language, find a job, settle in. So they can sign up for a year with Bridge for Peace, and we provide food to 24,000 people every month. For most of them, it's a one-year program while they get adjusted. Of course, we also work with the Holocaust survivors, over 1,300 Holocaust survivors that we take care of and show our love and compassion. We have a team on the ground that does home repairs and just helps in small ways to families and elderly who need assistance. We work with widows and orphans, and that has been a big project for us, especially after the war in Ukraine started. A lot of Jewish families have come to Israel and they have lost their husbands, their fathers, and of course it's a big project for us today. What has happened in Israel is very personal. We just recently got a text message from one of our friends in Kfar Aza, and in 2016 we were installing bomb shelters there, and we had a lunch. Bridge for Peace had a lunch with the local community, and we took a photo, and we got a message that everyone who was on that photo was either killed or kidnapped or wounded. And there couldn't be a more critical time to stand with the Jewish community and to show our love, support. And so that's what we're trying to do in different ways. And if we go to the next slide, we are providing food and blankets and clothing to people who were displaced, who have lost their homes. And also we are, next slide please, we're installing 4 bomb shelters. They're supposed to be installed next week, and in public areas where there are no shelters, they will now have a safe place. We are also purchasing an ambulance. Next slide please. That's going to come, but we did just a fun day for the displaced children, and trying to bring some joy and smiles to their faces among these terrible events. As you have heard, our founder, one of the things he was doing is just using his car as an ambulance, and we want to continue that work, and now we're purchasing an intensive care ambulance. Next slide please. Yes. And then next slide please. You can see our team in a bomb shelter during one of the attacks on Jerusalem. So in between packaging food, they run to the bomb shelters, and we do other projects like a Shabbat meal for the displaced families. We provide financial assistance to the families whose homes were destroyed, purchasing some computers and printers to assist to the families that are arranging funerals and burials. And one of our volunteer families, they were leaving Israel as their time was coming to an end in Israel, and they left all their furniture, and so we were able to furnish a whole apartment with that furniture. So that's what Bridge for Peace is doing today in Israel. We have around 60 volunteers on the ground. We have also a special project for young adults at age 18 to 30, and they can come to Israel for 11 months. They can volunteer learn about the land, learn about God, and a 20-year-old Canadian from Niverville, small town near Winnipeg, went to Israel just on September 1st. And of course, when the war broke out, his parents were extremely concerned and worried, but last week we had an event in Winnipeg and they came and shared that they feel like he's grown spiritually, maturing there, and he is learning to trust God. He wants to stay and do the work and help the Jewish people. And so they were, with tears in their eyes, they were extremely touched that the Lord was using all the situation for the good and for their son. And so that's what Bridges for Peace is about. And if you want to learn more, you can pick up one of our brochures that briefly tells you about Bridges for Peace, or if you want to share with your friends. We also have a magazine that is published in Jerusalem, dispatched from Jerusalem. So you can pick a copy if you enjoy it, you can sign up for it. And last slide, please. Of course, you can learn how to pray specifically about Israel. I know you know how to do that, but on our website, each Friday we have a list of certain prayer needs that you can include in your prayers. You can download our app, sign up to our social media to stay in touch and to know what we as Christians from around the world are able to do in Israel. And of course, you can support our work financially. And well, these words, I will bless those who bless you, are relevant as never before. Thank you for what you're doing. And we will continue to do God's work together for the sake of His kingdom. Amen.
It's a joy for Shabbat, Shel, Shalom, Messianic Fellowship to be partner with Bridges for Peace. And you are one of our mission organizations that we do support. And so we want you to have that and receive that with joy and with the love that it comes. You have there is a local representative here in the Fraser Valley. Would you like to introduce?
Yes, absolutely.
I think people know him, but anyway.
Yes, we have our representative of Bridges for Peace, John DeClear, our good friend. He loves Israel. He has volunteered in Israel many years ago. And if you want to know more about Bridges for Peace, John is a great person to connect with.
Amen. And our brother Alan has been in this for decades. Praise God. We do have time for a bit of Q&A, so if you and the team want to field some questions, go ahead and give these fellows some, and gal, some of your best shots as far as questions. Anybody? Always shy. Ron, you must have a question. I always call him.
Well, I was noticing the picture of the bomb shelter, and I was wondering, how much does one of those cost, and how many people will it accommodate?
So these bomb shelters that we're looking at right now, they are actually mobile bomb shelters that can be transferred from one place to another. About 15 to 20 people can find rescue there, and they cost around 25,000 American dollars. So that's what it costs. One ambulance costs around $150,000. Well, the intensive care one, 150 American. So that's the approximate cost. Yes.
How much does it cost for a volunteer to go? And how much does he have to pay to support himself while he's in Israel? Roughly.
Yes, thank you, Victor. So about 2,500 a month. That's about the amount. Yeah, well, everything is going up. The same is all around the world. Cost of food, cost of rent. Yes.
Do you accept 92-year-old seniors?
Thank you for your desire. I think that there is a limit on age, but there's always work to do, and including here, so there's always...
I think the age limit is 70, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, from what I understand, people over 70 still can go and still can get a volunteer visa, but it just depends on each location. Yes.
So your volunteers, are they all stationed, like are they in Jerusalem, or do they have outlying villages or communities?
Yes, they're all stationed in Jerusalem, and from there we deliver food and all the aid all across Israel.
So I'm guessing the transportation costs for dispersing and distributing is quite high for you then?
Well, we are trying to find the most efficient ways. Some of the aid we're delivering with the help of our team. Some we're partnering with other organizations and we're delivering that way.
So you need prayer for collaborative work and all for it to align in good timing.
Yes. Well, we need a lot of different prayers, but it's been mentioned today. But there couldn't be a more critical time to show our love and support in Israel and including here in Canada. And just a week ago, I was in Ottawa. There was a big summit dedicated to fighting anti-Semitism, and at the end of the conference, there were aggressive protesters outside, and so we were recommended to leave through the back door. And I decided to go and have a look at the protest, and one of the protesters started following me. He had a mask, he didn't say anything, but he was, well, I don't know, staring aggressively and following me. Even when I was headed towards my hotel, he was following me. I tried to engage in conversation with him, but he kept silent. And only when I reached police, he stopped following me. So, and though I'm not Jewish, but I could really feel the pressure. And thousands of Jewish people across Canada are concerned about their families, about their children, and they're so touched to hear that there are people outside of their community that care for them, that pray for them, that support them, that stand with them. And it's such an important time to be supporting the Jewish community in Israel, but also here in Canada.
I don't know if this is a silly question, but do you teach your volunteers any kind of combative self-protection skill?
No, not that I know of. Yes. Most of our work, as you've seen, is providing aid and support and building relationships. All of the aid that we provide is through personal relationships. So the 24,000 people that we provide food to, it's not just numbers. Most of them go through a sign-up process. We get to meet them. We know their situation, why they're applying to this program. So it's very personal, but that's where our focus is. Yes.
Do you help the volunteers to find a place to stay?
Yes, yeah, we provide that. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for coming, and bless you. in all that you do. And we stand with you as a congregation here. And just be reminded that tomorrow, I believe at 2 o'clock at the Vancouver Art Gallery. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, Vancouver Art Gallery, there is Stand for Israel gathering there. So that'll be tomorrow too.
Could I mention another event tomorrow? Sure. Tomorrow evening at 7 p.m., we're doing a program called the Canadian Connection to Israel's Rebirth at Transform Central Church. And you're all welcome there. It's a very inspiring story. I'd like to think that Dr. G. Douglas Young is a successor of William Hull, the Winnipegger, whose story we're going to tell tomorrow. Transform Central.
And also Monday night?
Monday night at the Clarion Hotel.
Okay.
Not to worry. Monday.
Well, there's two.
Two events. Tomorrow, Transform, 7 p.m. Monday, Clarion Hotel, 7 p.m. Same program both nights.
Oh, okay. So one or the other. Okay, very good. Very good. Well, let's stand. And Ron, if you would come, we will bless these good people. Yevarekeka, Yehovah, Vishmareka, Yael, Yehovah, Panavaleka, Veyikuneka, Yisa, Yehovah, Panav, Eleka, Veyasemleka, Shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give to you his shalom. Shabbat, shalom, Shabbat, shalom, Shabbat, 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 shalom, Shabbat, shalom, Shabbat, shalom, Shabbat, 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 shalom, Shabbat, 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 shalom, Shabbat, 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 shalom, Shabbat, shalom, Shabbat, shalom. Shalom, shalom.